Sweet, sweet Spirit, infinite presence, source of all that is, abounding with insights, inspiration, joy, love. As I look around in my mind's eye, I take in the wonder of this earth, of nature, of home. Each of us spins in infinity. Each of us channeling source, infinite possibility, infinite spiritual power. I know I am one with the mind, one with all that is. I see spiritual power in oneness. I see ripening, unfolding. Each breath welcomes new beginnings. Each breath is a miracle. I see the universe opening up for each of us as we step through into greater abundance. We are each a co-creator of our experiences. In deep reverence, knowing each of us is in the flow of divine good, I affirm the following. I allow, I receive, and I accept. I feel divine energy flowing effortlessly as insights, inspiration, joy, love. And I accept all this as natural. All good shows up for each of us as each of us. Divine potential is infinite, bigger than any concern. Right now, each of us is manifesting divine mind's finest creation. I know that as an expression of life, each of us is energized by the same power that stimulates the waves on the ocean. It's the same power that supports those flocks of birds that fly through the sky and land to nourish. It's the same power that is in those seeds that as they're planted, they grow and fully express. We are each a powerful being, deserving of all of the bounty of the universe. Again, I allow, I receive, I accept. And so I know that the words spoken today inspire. The music is joy. Our community is rich with insights and love. I am in deep gratitude for our coming together. Each of us manifesting spiritual power come to life, opening up as channels of divine good. I release this into the spiritual law, which expresses naturally and eternally. The life principle manifests as me, as us, in every moment. And so it is. Let us rest in contemplation.
So this month we've been looking at, although not officially, but we've been looking at the topic of power to the people, which is, I think, kind of an appropriate thing to take a look at right around now. And so today our talk is our personal power. And we're all expressions of infinite power. We're all expressions of an infinite power. Power comes from the infinite through us. See, you and I aren't power itself by ourselves. We get to use power, yes? We get to use this infinite power. We get to let it come through us. And power happens to be a triggering word. How many people get triggered sometimes by the word power? Yeah, okay. Oftentimes because the way that we've had it taught to us is it's really control, not power. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Many of us have heard that wonderful phrase, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which means that the infinite presence is the most corrupt thing in the universe if you really believe that saying. But what it really was an English Lord Acton, who was writing to a bishop in England, and who said power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he was talking about the particular king and the head of the church there that were both acting as though they were above the law. They were doing all sorts of stuff that they shouldn't have done, that was against the law, but because they were the king or the, I want to say pope, that's not quite the word, but the head of the church, they felt they could do whatever they wanted to do. I'm so glad times have changed since then. So there's the difference between control, and I control out of fear. I try to manipulate things and control them, and that oftentimes in our culture gets mistaken for power. But true power is really simply the ability to create. The physics definition of power is just simply the ability to get the work done, to do things. So we want to be clean with our power. We talk about clean power when we talk about electricity and things like that, yes? Guess what? We have to be clean in our power, yes? If we want to express that, we have to be clean of our own corruption, of our own stuff internally. Power is there's a New Thought writer from the early 1900s, Thomas Troward, who was a judge a retired judge in England, who wrote about the 7 main aspects of God that started off with life, love, light, and light is the ability to perceive all possible outcomes. And the next one was power, that power is a quality of the divine. And so that power, that aspect creates from the life, the love, and the light. And then it encounters peace because there's a oneness, because this presence is a oneness, there's nothing opposed to it. See, you and I, if we believe in conditions, we believe that there are people or things opposed to us. But if we can rise up above that, we realize that as we are aspects of the divine and we are in harmony with the divine, if our alignment is clear, there's nothing against that. There's nothing that's holding us back from being pure love. There's nothing that's holding us back from being our pure light. It's only as we kind of sink in and believe the conditioned beliefs that we've all grown up with, yes? That we start to get into that. And then out of that power comes peace, and out of that peace, so the creation of it results in beauty, which has the experience of joy. Those are the 7 main aspects: life, love, light, power, peace, beauty, and joy of the divine. So clean, true power is our ability to enact the divine nature in human form, in human expression, in human experience. And again, in order to do that, we need to be clean of our own inner pollutants, of our own, I was using last month a chart that had, our mental blocks and then our emotional conflicts. And we need to be clean in that area of our lives, which, we all are, right? Oh yeah, I am. I know, completely enlightened. Otherwise, we will slide from true power, from true clean power, to fear-based control. So let's look at the ways that we pollute our power for a moment, just so we can understand it, so we can start to release it and start to free ourselves from it a little bit more. So the basis of all of our pollution is either fear or ignorance of our own real power. It's either we fear our power or we don't even know that we have power to work with. And power is like faith. In fact, faith is power. We talked last month about how we direct faith, and it's how we direct our power. What do we direct it? Where do we direct it towards? And that determines our experience of and with power. Because the universe is a mirror. It will reflect back to us however we put out. So if I'm putting out, let's call it dirty power, what's going to get reflected back to me is dirty power. If I'm putting out clean power, say love, pure, just wonderful love, what gets reflected back to me by the universe is love. By the way, that does not mean that if I love Susan, I'm going to just point to Susan here because she's sitting right in front of me, that she's going to love me back in exactly the same way, but the universe sends back that love. It doesn't necessarily come from the same channel that I send it to. Got that? Oftentimes we have an expectation, if I'm nice to you, you'll be nice to me. That person may not be able to be nice to you right now. But that doesn't mean your kindness goes goes ignored. So, you're no longer ignorant about having or being power, right? Yes? You have the power of the infinite behind you, within you. Always. Take a breath. Whether you know it or not, whether you feel like it or not, the only reason you don't feel like it is because the circumstances have talked you down. So let's look at the fears that pollute and misdirect it. So we use power to get what we desire. And for most of us, our desires are based in fear. There's a minister named, New Thought minister named Reverend Lloyd Strom who created a model called the 5 Faces of Desire, which is fear-based desire. And he distinguishes between desire, which he views as based on fear, and inspiration, which inspiro is literally the breath of spirit within, inspiration, which is based on our fullness or on our love. I don't always agree with that because I think that we can have, I call it desires of the heart, desires of the soul. And to me, that's where we want to come from. But we're basically saying the same thing with different semantics, okay? So what he calls this 5 phases of desire is this fear-based desire. And fear is like a frozen emotion. And when it begins to thaw, it precipitates as unhealthy desires, and we use control to try to make them happen. So as we develop the courage to heal our fears, we'll encounter or become aware of 5 stages. And trust me, we all move through these 5 stages, and trust me, we're all in these 5 stages as somewhere in our lives. Okay, as we start to talk about them, you'll recognize them. You'll recognize them within yourself. And it's okay. So first, we need to recognize that fear is inhibiting. It's constricting. We get frozen with fear, we get numb with fear, and we don't really feel fear as an emotion, which is an energy in motion. We feel it as a constriction, as a holding back. And so the first way that we desire or experience the fear is a desire to hide. And all 5 of these phases are H phases. So the first phase is the desire to hide outside or away from what I fear, to flee. Okay? We see this right now in the, I'm leaving the United States and moving to Canada or Costa Rica or wherever. Okay? That's the desire to flee. And fleeing is appropriate in the face of immediate real danger. You know, there's a wild animal coming after us. There's a truck bearing down on us. We're experiencing a physical attack. But most of us get triggered by inner perceptions of danger. We get triggered by our own awfulizing. Oh my, we're watching this happen right now. Oh my God, all this is going to happen. How many of you really are absolutely certain that you know what's going to happen in the future? Good. I'm not either. But we build up perceptions, and we can look at tendencies and patterns, but they don't have to continue. That's what we're about, is change our thinking, change our life. Ernest Holmes calls it change the time track you're on and create a new time track, a new track of where we're going. So this phase of hiding by hiding from, hiding outside, ranges from pure terror to being a little nervous. Sometimes when I'm working with people, they talk about, well, I'm just a little bit nervous. Oh, so you've got a fear. No, I'm not afraid. I'm just a little bit nervous. Sorry, a little bit nervous is you're afraid. The therapist will tell you there's only 4 basic, emotions, mad, sad, glad, or scared. So we're in that place of being scared. Every form of anxiety, worry, and strategy of avoidance, conscious or unconscious, is a desire to hide from what we fear. Take a breath. And what we fear is some form of death, as our primal fear. Now, I've talked to people who, I don't have a fear of death anymore. You know, first of all, I'll say BS, belief system. But secondly, it's death of life as we know it. And we see this anytime a change happens that we're a little bit uncomfortable with. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm afraid of the death of the life that I've been living. I'm afraid of the comfort zone that I have established already and that it's going to get shaken up. Yes? Okay, so that is part of our fear of death. And without fear, then, the desire to hide becomes the inspiration as the serenity to stay. The serenity to stay. Now, I'm not talking of if you're living in a really tremendously abusive relationship. No, don't just practice serenity to stay. Get out. You know, that's where I talk about that there's a time where fleeing is appropriate. You know, you don't stand in front of an oncoming, moving vehicle and go, I'm just going to have this serenity to stay here. How's that going to work for you, Years ago, I was in a relationship. I describe it as the relationship where this person and I dated for a year and a quarter over 2.5 years because the relationship was on, off, high, low, up, down. There was no middle ground. There was just, And after a while, I was praying for a while, just like God sent me my right relationship, and every time I would pray that prayer, she would come back into my life. And so after a while, my prayer became, God, send me my right relationship, but it's not her. And she would still come back in my life. That was my level of consciousness of prayer at that time. And we both had friends. We were both very, she was on staff at Center for Spiritual Living Seattle. I was on part-time staff at Center for Spiritual Living Seattle. I was their sound tech. And so, we were both very involved, and the community then was witnessing this whole thing, going on. And so we were all getting advice from everybody else. You guys really need to break up. You need to let her go. You need to let him go, all that sort of stuff. What I finally came to at one point finally was, I need to walk this relationship to its end. I need to just stay here and surf this, whatever this is, until the waves finally complete. And as you know, all surf eventually winds down. And so I did. And it was a really powerful experience to just stay in that. That was the serenity to stay. And to allow that to come to its natural end and to have no leftover stuff. So that's the serenity to stay. And that's when we're not in fear, our desire to hide becomes the serenity to stay. The serenity to ride out the waves until they come back to peace, which lives within us. The second face of the desire is the desire to hide inside. So the first one is the desire to hide outside. I'm going to get out of here. The second one can be called playing possum. I'm going to play dead. I'm going to put my head in the sand. I'm going to, we use this face when we can't find an exit strategy. Okay? Many of us grew up in doing this practice. Yes? So people who have experienced severe trauma or abuse often go into this face. And many of us have learned this face as a strategy for dealing with circumstances that felt too big or were too big or overwhelming for us to deal with. And so playing small, being invisible, being shut down, giving my power away, having my head in the sand is a way of hiding inside. And again, right now in our country, we notice that there are people who are doing that. I'm just going to sit here in my own little world, and I don't care what's happening out there. Breathe. But we do that not just because of the political situation. We've been doing that. If we've been doing that now, we've learned that habit a long time ago in a lot of other circumstances. And all of those are examples of hiding inside. Lloyd Strom calls it the mood of death. And it comes as it's experienced as sorrow and as shame. And so we experience it either as sorrow, and sorrow is when we feel our lives are not good enough to please ourselves, and that they won't get any better. That's that hopelessness. And so it shows up as that hopelessness. It shows up as ongoing grief. It shows up as despair and depression, and we withdraw from life and become isolated within ourselves. And things like the election and like the pandemic have triggered this response for a lot of people in the country. We experience shame, which is the other side of that, when we feel that we are not good enough to please others. The first one was our life is not good enough for us. The second one is my life is not good enough to please others. That's where we get into shame. And shame can result in shyness, timidity, and results in strategies of appeasement, people-pleasing, codependent behavior, all that. How can I please you? Because my life isn't good enough. I can't just be me and be loved. I have to do stuff. Breathe. In order to function, and so in the absence of fear, the desire to withdraw or to go hide inside becomes the inspiration to embrace life more fully. Something is happening, and we start to ask, instead of hiding out, how can I embrace life even more fully? How can my arms get bigger to embrace what's going on? The third face is the desire to harm what I fear. And this face shows up when we develop the courage to let go of our strategies for hiding. And it oftentimes is a coming out. It's like, I've put up with this enough, and I ain't putting up with this blankety blank no more. And then I come out angry. I hate all men, I hate all women, I hate all this stuff, right? I'm angry. Frankly, I think that some of what we are seeing happening in the country over the last, say, decade is a whole lot of people who have felt the fact that they dislike certain groups of people, but it's been squelched because it's not socially acceptable. And suddenly we've got a leader who says, oh no, you can hate everybody, it's just fine. And they say, oh yeah, let's do that. And that's the anger, that's the desire to harm coming out. And it's coming out from the fear of I have to hide that. Breathe. So the desire to harm can show up in a variety of ways, from pure hatred and rage to upset to anger and even fleeting minor annoyances. Somebody cuts me off on the freeway and I want to go back and do what? Cut them off, flip them off, whatever. So the form of harm we might inflict on others ranges from physical harm, death. I know people who are sitting there going, too bad that guy who hit the ear couldn't have been a better aim. That's called the desire to harm. Breathe. So we have physical harm, death, criticism and complaint, legal action, I'm going to sue you, or put you in jail or whatever, or even a subtle condescending attitude. You voted for him? You like that dress? Shame is often the primary trigger for the desire to harm. Many of us feel embarrassed, which is a form of shame, because we thought things were different than they were. And we have found out that we were wrong, and therefore we feel shamed. In the absence of fear, the desire to harm becomes the inspiration to play with what is. The inspiration to play. The fourth face is the desire to have or possess what I fear. If I own it, I can control it. What we're really seeking is wholeness and the experience of love, but instead we confuse that with the desire to acquire and engage lust, greed, jealousy, and strategies of acquisition, controlling the world, controlling other people, so that I can impose my will and not have my fear be triggered. Yes? Yes? So it's to protect ourselves from facing our fears or feeling our hurt. And we mistake acquiring material possessions, things, and people, which are always temporary. If you're in a partner relationship, your relationship is temporary, yes? Okay? If you didn't know that. Yeah. And by the way, enjoy it while it's here. I'm not saying don't enjoy it. But also, that person is not your source. And is really not here for all of eternity. They're here for this moment of eternity. So we mistake acquiring these possessions, which are temporary, for the experience of the deep love that lives freely within us. And so when we're in the fear mode, this ranges from acquiring a lot of things. The old saying, he who dies with the most toys wins, is very much out of that, to seeking my soulmate, the one who will make me happy, who will make me happy. Can another person make you happy? No. They can be kind and loving, but I experienced this when I was first came here, and I remember Adrian, after about a year told me, we love you, don't you? And it's just like, I realized there was a part of me that did not connect with, I could intellectually know it, but I didn't feel loved. And it wasn't anything to do with the community. It had to do with my own walls that I had up. So there's no person that can make us happy. Oftentimes we end up hating the objects of our desire because of the underlying fears upon which they were based, because I really got this thing or this person or this situation in order to not face the fear. Yes? And then they trigger our fear of loss, of rejection, or death. We've known people who, yes, I get the relationship I want, or I get the amount of money I want, and then I'm scared of losing it all, and I live in fear for the rest of my life, about that. So the desire to have and the desire to harm are closely related, as anybody who's ever gone through a messy divorce knows. In the absence of fear, the desire to possess becomes an inspiration to express life more abundantly from the fullness that we are, instead of trying to possess from our emptiness. To express out from our fullness, instead of trying to fill our emptiness. And then the final phase of fear-based desire is the desire to help others with what I fear. It's very subtle. I'm afraid this is going to happen, so I'm going to help you so it won't happen. I'm afraid you're going to reject me and not be very loving to me, so I'm going to help you to be more loving. Got that? So this shows up as an attitude of, I know how to live your life better than you do. Or worse, the Messiah complex, I'm here to save the whole world, which is out of my own fear. When we're engaged in this phase, we help, which is pseudo-charity from guilt and the fear that if we don't help others with what they fear, then something bad will happen to us. Yes? Do you get that connection? Some do? Yeah. There's a difference between helping from love. Healing is really what Lloyd calls it, healing, true healing. And trying to, I'm going to help you. How many of you have been helped by somebody that you didn't want their help from? Okay, that's the kind of help I'm talking about. So we're afraid that if we don't help others, then something bad will happen to us, which can be simply that God or others won't think that we're good people, which is BS. For those who are new, BS is what you think it is, and it's also belief systems. Okay? So the desire to help others is an indication that our hidden fears are leaving us. They're leaving us and are now outside of us and living in the lives of others. So I can recognize my own fears showing up in that person's life. In psychology, this is known as projection. Projection. You're doing what I'm doing it, but I'm going to see it in you instead. I can't see it in me yet. Lloyd Strom has a wonderful little saying that says, "Cursed are those who give for the joy of their own soul. Blessed are those who give from the joy of their own soul." Again, am I trying to give from my fullness, or am I trying to fill up my emptiness? And we can use that in trying to help others from our own fears, or to alleviate our own fears in the outer. And when we can give that up, we actually can face and heal our own fears, and we become capable then of truly healing instead of just helping. We become the healing energy supporting others by our presence rather than our activities. By our presence rather than our activities. When I was trained as a rebirther, one of the things that we were taught was your presence alone is enough. It's not what you do in the rebirthing process, it's just your presence being with that person in the rebirthing process. Our practitioners in many ways do the same thing. It's their presence is enough. If they're sitting in their, or standing in their power, in their true authenticity, then just simply the presence of that is enough to heal. And it's not the words they say, it's not the, whatever gestures they do or any actions. Our presence is enough. So in the absence of fear, the sympathetic desire to help becomes the compassionate inspiration to heal. And it's to heal all who ask for help. How many of you, again, have been helped by people that you didn't ask for their help? Doesn't feel good, does it? No. And so when people ask for our help, because they have to come to the point of saying, I really could use some help with this. And then out of our compassionate inspiration to heal, we can do that. But it first requires our own healing. And that's part of the thing with power. Voltaire had a wonderful quote that said, with great power comes great responsibility. Voltaire was a French philosopher. Now, you may know that as Uncle Ben telling Spider-Man that, but he was actually quoting Voltaire. With great power comes great responsibility. So as we become more aware of our power, we become more aware that we have to be clean in our power. So only real, authentic love, which is the true power, can dispel our fears. The true power of the divine is love. It is love. And so our desires can never be fulfilled as long as the fear that spawned them can exist. So perfect love is the unconditional forgiveness that ultimately leads us to be grateful for the very thing that we first feared. When we can move from, you hurt me, to, I'm grateful that I had that experience. I don't condone your behavior, by the way, but I'm grateful and I'm a better person for having walked through that fire. So we have the responsibility to be clean conduits of true power, to be the true conduits for the power of life, of love, of wisdom moving through us. And we can only do that by cleaning out our own channels so that pure, infinite power can flow through us, expressing greater life for all. That's our intention. That's our hope. So this week's practice is a simple one. Pay attention. By the way, that should be your every week practice and your every day and every moment practice. Pay attention. Notice where and how the 5 faces of fear-based desire show up in your life. And trust me, they do in all of our lives. And I find that there's aspects of my life that I live in a much higher place, and there's aspects of my life that I'm still either wanting to flee or hide out or go within. And there's times I want to harm. So just notice that. And again, the 5 faces are hiding outside, which is the fight or flee response. Hiding inside, which is the freeze or faint response. Harming, which is the fight response. Having, possessing, or helping. And so listen to your true power within and choose love in those situations instead. As you experience those situations in your life, take a step back and listen and say, what is pure love? What does true power want to express through me? Are you willing to play with that practice this week? Yes. Great. And I'm going to send to Sandy Dell those 5 faces of desire, and we'll post the whole little thing on the website. So you can, if you want to work with that. So I want to close with a quote from Reverend Lloyd Strom, who says, whenever we are too brave to flee, too wise to withdraw, too kind to fight, too virtuous to lust, and too humble to help, then we are ready to love and become a true healer. Whenever we are too brave to flee, too wise to withdraw, too kind to fight, too virtuous to lust, and too humble to help, then we are ready to love and become a true healer. And so we have an affirmation. Say this with me. I stand cleanly in the divine power within as a force for good. One more time. I stand cleanly in the divine power within as a force for good. And so it is, and so you are, and so I am, and so we are. Yes. Thank you.